The needle slipped from Dr. Victor Lang's gloved fingers and clattered against the steel tray. His hands were shaking, actually shaking, and the monitors screamed around him like dying animals. Blood pooled across the gurney, dark and fast, spreading toward the floor in rivulets that caught the fluorescent light. He cursed under his breath, reached for another clamp, dropped that too. "Someone get me." His voice cracked. Emily Hayes stood 3 feet away, scrub cap tight over her blonde hair, eyes locked on the patient's failing vitals. She'd seen this before. Not here, not in the climate-controlled safety of Ridgeway Medical Center in Charleston, but overseas. Intense with canvas walls that flapped in the wind and dirt that got into everything. She knew what came next. "Doctor, if you let me—" "Shut up!" Lang didn't even look at her, just snapped it out like she was a dog barking during surgery. 2 residents froze mid-motion. A nurse near the door looked down at her shoes. Emily's jaw tightened, but she stayed quiet. She'd learned that years ago, when to push, when to wait. This wasn't her fight, not yet. 60 seconds later, the patient flatlined. And 20 minutes after that, the first military convoy rolled up to the ER entrance with sirens that didn't sound like anything civilian, and everything Lang thought he knew about the night shift shattered into 1,000 pieces he'd never put back together. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world, drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story can travel. Hit subscribe, stay until the end, and watch what happens when the person everyone underestimated becomes the only one who can save them all. The morning had started normal. Too normal. Emily clocked in at 6:45, tied her hair back, checked the board. Standard ER flow, chest pain in Bay 3, a kid with a broken wrist in pediatrics, someone's grandmother with low blood sugar. She moved through it like water, efficient and invisible. That was the trick. Do the work. Don't make noise. Go home. Victor Lang arrived at 7:30 in a tailored coat that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He had that look. Sharp jaw, silver at the temples, the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. He was chief of surgery, which meant he ran the department like a kingdom and treated everyone below attending rank like vassals. Emily had worked under him for 11 months. He'd never once used her first name. "Hayes?" He didn't look up from his tablet. "I need someone to restock the crash carts. Make sure it's done before noon." "Already done, doctor." His eyes flicked up, annoyed that she'd answered. "Fine. Then check the med supply logs. Something's off in the tallies. Checked them yesterday. Submitted the corrected counts to pharmacy." A pause. His mouth twitched. Not a smile, something colder. "You looking for extra responsibility, nurse?" "No, sir, just staying ahead." "Good. Stay in your lane while you're at it." He walked past her, trailed by 2 residents who laughed at something he muttered under his breath. Emily didn't react. She'd heard worse. Done worse, actually, back when her uniform was desert tan and her patients came in with shrapnel wounds and traumatic amputations. Compared to that, Victor Lang was just another loud voice in a long line of them. She moved to the next task. Restocked gloves. Updated a chart. Helped an elderly man to the bathroom. Invisible work. The kind that kept hospitals running and got no credit. At 11, things picked up. A car accident on the interstate brought in 2 teenagers, both stable but shaken. Emily took the girl, 16, maybe 17, mascara streaked down her face, hyperventilating. She knelt beside the gurney and spoke low, calm. "Hey, look at me. You're okay. You're safe now." The girl's breathing slowed, her fingers unclenched from the blanket. "Good. That's good. I'm Emily. I'm going to stay right here with you." By the time the doctor came in to examine her, the girl was calm enough to answer questions. The parents arrived 20 minutes later, frantic and weeping. Emily slipped out before they could thank her. She didn't need thanks. She needed the shift to end. Lunch was a granola bar, eaten standing up in the break room while she scrolled through her phone. A message from her brother. "Still on for Sunday?" She typed back a thumbs up. Another from her landlord about a plumbing issue. She'd deal with it tomorrow. "Hayes!" She turned. Dr. Lang stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, that same look of vague irritation stamped across his face. "Trauma Bay in 5. Multi-vehicle pileup. GSW coming in hot behind it. I need hands." "On it." She tossed the wrapper, rinsed her hands, and headed for the bay. The energy in the ER had shifted, tighter now, more focused. Nurses moved faster. Residents clustered near the ambulance entrance. Emily pulled on a fresh pair of gloves and positioned herself near the equipment cart. The first patient rolled in on a backboard, mid-30s, unconscious, neck brace, blood soaking through the bandages on his side. The paramedic rattled off vitals while they transferred him to the gurney. Emily's hands moved on autopilot, cutting away clothing, securing IV access, prepping the monitors. "Pressure's dropping," she said, eyes on the screen. Lang stepped in, glanced at the wound, started barking orders. "I need 2 units of ONEG. Get a chest x-ray. Someone page cardiothoracic." "Doctor." Emily kept her voice level. "His pressure's dropping fast. We should consider—" "I'm aware, Hayes. Focus on what I'm telling you." She bit down on the rest of the sentence and stepped back. The resident moved in, fumbled with the IV line. Emily watched the monitor, watched the numbers slide, watched Lang's face tighten as he realized the bleed wasn't stopping. "Damn it, where's that blood?" "On the way," someone called from the hallway. But Emily could see it already. The way the patient's breathing shallowed, the way his color shifted. She'd seen it 100 times before, in worse conditions, with fewer resources. There was a moment, a narrow closing window, where you could still pull someone back. After that, it was just cleanup. "Doctor, I really think—" "Hayes, if you can't follow orders, leave the bay." The room went quiet. Not silent. Machines still beeped, people still moved, but the human noise stopped. Everyone looked at her, then at Lang, then back at their tasks, pretending they hadn't heard. Emily's hands stilled. Her face didn't change. She just stepped back, peeled off her gloves, and walked out. She found the supply closet and leaned against the shelves, breathing slow and controlled. Not angry. Anger didn't help. Something hard settled in her chest. The same thing that used to settle in when officers ignored intel and people died because of it. She'd left that behind. Or thought she had. 5 minutes later, someone knocked. "Emily?" It was Carla, one of the senior nurses. Older, graying hair, the kind of steady presence that made new hires feel less terrified. "You good?" "Yeah." Carla gave her a look. "Lang's an ass. Everyone knows it." "I know." "You didn't do anything wrong." Emily shrugged. "Doesn't matter." "It does, though." Carla crossed her arms. "You were right, by the way. Patient crashed 2 minutes after you left. They had to crack his chest in the bay." Emily closed her eyes. "He make it?" "Barely. Lang's in there now, acting like he saved the day." "Of course he was." Carla squeezed her shoulder. "Come on. Shift's not over." They walked back out together. The ER had steadied again, the chaos temporarily contained. Emily picked up a clipboard, checked the next name on the board. Somewhere behind her, she heard Lang's voice, loud, confident, talking to a resident about technique and decision-making like he hadn't just frozen under pressure. She kept walking. At 4:15, the police scanner on the front desk crackled to life. Dispatch codes. Nothing unusual. Emily was restocking suture kits when she heard it. 3 short bursts, a tone she hadn't heard in years. Military frequency. Specific cadence. Her hands stopped. The dispatcher's voice came through, clipped and fast. "All units, convoy route compromised. Multiple casualties inbound. Repeat. Multiple casualties inbound. Ridgeway Medical is primary receiving." The room shifted. Heads turned toward the desk. Someone said, "What the hell is a convoy doing in Charleston?" No one answered. Emily set down the kit and moved toward the entrance. Through the glass doors, she could see headlights in the distance. Too many, too bright, moving too fast. Not ambulances. Something bigger. The first truck pulled up, a heavy transport with military markings half covered by mud. The back doors flew open and soldiers poured out, some limping, some carried. A medic jumped down, face pale, shouting into a radio. Emily pushed through the doors and into the night air. The smell hit her first. Blood, diesel, burnt metal. She'd smelled it before. Her body remembered before her brain did. "Ma'am, we need—" The medic spotted her scrubs. "We need triage now. We've got 8 critical, maybe more. Comms are down. We can't reach base. How many total?" 23. "Some are stable, but—" He gestured helplessly toward the trucks. Emily turned back toward the entrance. Lang was standing just inside, staring out at the scene like it was written in a language he couldn't read. Doctor, we need to set up triage in the ambulance bay. Pull every available nurse and resident. We'll need 3 stations minimum: red, yellow, green. Lang blinked at her. What are you talking about? We follow standard ER protocol. This isn't standard. You've got mass trauma, unknown injuries, limited information. We need triage before they hit the ER, or we'll bottleneck in 30 seconds. Hayes, I'm not taking field advice from a nurse. Then people die. Her voice didn't rise, didn't crack, just landed flat and cold in the space between them. Lang's face went red. You're out of line. Get inside and prep the bays like I told you. Emily held his gaze for 3 seconds. Then she turned and walked straight past him, back toward the trucks. Where the hell are you going? She didn't answer. The medic was unloading another soldier, conscious, bleeding from the leg, gripping his rifle like he didn't know where he was. Emily knelt beside him, checked his pulse, scanned for other injuries. Can you hear me? Yeah. His voice was hoarse. Yeah, I can hear you. Good. I'm a nurse. I'm going to get you inside. What's your name? Booker. Sergeant Booker. All right, Sergeant, stay with me. She motioned to another nurse who'd followed her out. Take him to Bay 2. Leg wound, possible shock, start fluids. The nurse hesitated. Lang said, I don't care what Lang said. Move. The nurse moved. Emily stood, turned back to the trucks. More patients were coming out now, some walking, some on stretchers, one kid who couldn't have been older than 20 screaming about his arm. She started sorting them in her head the way she used to overseas. Red tags first, life-threatening, immediate. Yellow next, serious but stable. Green could wait. She moved fast, didn't think, just did. Pointed, directed, called out instructions. Some of the staff followed her lead because it made sense, because someone had to take charge, because the alternative was standing there watching people bleed out in the parking lot. Lang's voice cut through the noise. Hayes, stop this right now! She ignored him, tagged another patient, sent him to Bay 4. You're done. Do you hear me? You're... A hand landed on Lang's shoulder, hard. Step back, doctor. The voice was military, low, controlled, the kind that didn't ask twice. Emily glanced over. A man in uniform stood there, captain's bars on his collar, face carved from stone. Lang sputtered. Who the hell are you? Captain Warren? United States Army. This is a military operation now. You'll follow protocol or get out of the way. This is my hospital, and these are my soldiers. Warren's eyes flicked to Emily. He stared at her for a long moment. Then his posture changed, just slightly, but enough. Recognition. Lieutenant Hayes? The parking lot went quiet. Emily straightened, met his eyes. It's just Emily now. I'm a nurse. Warren's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Nurse. Right. Lang looked between them, confusion bleeding into something sharper. You two know each other? Warren didn't look at him. She ran combat triage in Kandahar, saved 40 men in one night during a coordinated attack. She kept the aid station running when half the medical team was down and we had wounded coming in faster than we could count them. Silence. Emily's jaw tightened. That was a long time ago. Not that long. Warren turned to Lang. If she's giving orders, you follow them. Clear? Lang's face went white, then red, then something between the two. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. She's a nurse. She's the most qualified person in this building. Warren's voice didn't rise, but it cut like wire. So unless you've got combat trauma training I don't know about, step aside and let her work. Emily didn't wait for Lang to answer. She turned back to the trucks, kept moving. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. She'd done this before, and muscle memory was a language her body still spoke fluently. The ER flooded. Patients poured in faster than the system could handle. Residents scrambled. Equipment carts jammed in doorways. Someone started yelling about blood supplies. Another monitor alarm went off. Then another. Then 5 at once. Emily stood in the center of it, calm as stone, and started sorting the chaos into something manageable. Bay 1. Sucking chest wound. I need a chest tube kit and someone who knows how to place it. Bay 3. Compound fracture, splint and sedate. He's not critical yet, but will be if we wait. Bay 5. Head trauma, possible skull fracture. Get me a CT scan and neuroconsult now. Her voice carried. Steady, clear, no hesitation. People moved. They didn't question. They just moved. Lang stood near the nurse's station, watching. His face had gone slack, color drained out of it, like he was watching a building collapse in slow motion and couldn't figure out how to stop it. A resident ran past, wild-eyed. "We're out of O-neg in the blood bank." "Then call the blood center and tell them we need emergency supply. Tell them it's military trauma, they'll prioritize." Emily didn't even look up from the chart in her hands. "And get someone to check the ambulance bay cooler. We keep backup units there." The resident blinked. "I didn't know. Now you do. Go." He went. Another patient crashed. Emily was there in seconds, hands on the gurney, eyes on the monitor. V-fib. Charge to 200. The resident fumbled with the defibrillator. Emily took it from him, placed the paddles, checked the rhythm. "Clear." The body jerked. The line bounced. Sinus rhythm. "Good. Bag him. Someone get me an ambu bag and keep ventilation steady. We're not losing him." They didn't lose him. She moved to the next bay, then the next. Each time her voice stayed level. Each time the situation stabilized just a little more. Not perfect, not easy, but controlled. Warren watched from the hallway, arms crossed, something like respect settling into the lines of his face. Another officer approached him, younger, nervous. "Sir, comms are back up. Base is asking for a status report." "Tell them we're stable. Tell them the on-site medical response is being handled by a former combat medic and the situation is under control." The officer glanced at Emily. "Her?" "Yeah, her." Back in the trauma bay, Emily was wrist-deep in a wound, clamping a bleeder while a resident tried to keep up. Blood slicked her gloves. Sweat dripped down her temple. She didn't blink. "Doctor, I need you to hold this clamp exactly where I put it. Don't move. Don't adjust. Just hold." The resident nodded, pale but focused. "Good. Now I'm going to ligate this vessel. You keep pressure here." She pointed. "If it slips, he bleeds out. Understand?" "Yes." "Then let's do it." They did it. When the patient stabilized and moved to ICU, Emily peeled off her gloves and stepped into the hallway. Her hands were shaking now, just a little, barely visible. She flexed her fingers, pulled in a slow breath. Carla appeared beside her, holding a bottle of water. "You good?" Emily took it, drank half in one go. "Yeah." "That was—" Carla shook her head. "I've never seen anything like that. It's just triage." "That wasn't just anything." Emily didn't answer. She capped the bottle, turned back toward the ER. There were still patients waiting, still work to do. But when she looked through the glass doors into the main bay, she saw Lang standing near the central desk, staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. Two residents stood nearby, talking in low voices. One of them glanced at Emily, then quickly looked away. Warren walked up beside her. "You've still got it. I never wanted to use it again." "I know." He paused. "But you did, and they're alive because of it." Emily's throat tightened. She didn't look at him, just nodded once. "We'll be transporting most of them to the base hospital once they're stable," Warren continued. "But I'll need a full report from whoever ran point here tonight." "That'd be me." "I know." His voice softened. "Thank you, Lieutenant." "It's just Emily." "Right." He almost smiled. "Just Emily." He walked away back toward his team. Emily stood there a moment longer, watching the controlled chaos inside slowly wind down into something manageable. The worst was over. The critical patients were stable. The system had held, barely, but it had held. She turned to head back inside and nearly walked straight into Victor Lang. He looked terrible, pale, drawn. His coat was rumpled, his tie loosened. He stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, a variable that didn't fit the equation. "Hayes?" She waited. "I didn't know." His voice was hoarse. "About your background. About what you—" He stopped, swallowed. "You should have told me." Emily's expression didn't change. "Why? So you'd listen to me?" He flinched. "I shouldn't have to justify my experience for you to take me seriously, doctor. I'm a nurse. That's my job. It's always been my job. You dismissed me in front of the entire staff. You told me to stay in my lane. You made it clear that my input didn't matter. Her voice stayed calm, but every word landed like a stone. And when lives were on the line, you still fought me instead of listening. Lang's face crumpled. I was wrong. Yeah, you were. She stepped past him, back into the ER. He stood there, frozen, watching her disappear into the organized chaos she'd built out of nothing. By 3 a.m., the ER had finally quieted. Most of the soldiers were stable, prepped for transport or admitted to ICU. The rest of the patients, the normal overnight emergencies, filled the remaining bays. Emily finished updating a chart, filed it, and leaned against the desk. Her body ached. Her feet throbbed. Her hands had stopped shaking an hour ago, replaced by a heavy, bone-deep exhaustion she remembered from deployment, the kind that didn't go away with sleep. Carla walked past, paused, doubled back. You should go home. Still on shift. Emily, go home. She thought about arguing, didn't have the energy. She nodded, grabbed her jacket from her locker, and walked out through the ambulance bay. The night air was cool, sharp, after the stale warmth of the ER. A few military trucks were still parked outside, engines idling. Soldiers sat on the tailgates, smoking, talking quietly. One of them looked up as she passed. Hey, you're the nurse, right? The one who ran triage? Emily paused. Yeah. My buddy's alive because of you. Said you were the first one who touched him after he got pulled out of the wreck. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Thanks, the soldier said. Simple, sincere. She nodded again and kept walking. Her car was parked at the far end of the lot, under a flickering streetlight. She unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat, and sat there for a long moment, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Captain Warren. Got your contact from hospital admin. Just wanted to say, what you did tonight saved lives. A lot of them. If you ever need anything, call me. She read it twice, then set the phone down and started the engine. The drive home was quiet. Empty streets, red lights that blinked instead of cycled. She pulled into her apartment complex, parked, climbed the stairs to her unit on the second floor. Inside, she dropped her keys on the counter, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto the couch without turning on the lights. Her mind wouldn't shut off. The faces of the patients cycled through her head, one after another, snapshots of pain and fear and relief. She'd done this before. She'd thought she was done with it, thought she'd left that version of herself behind when she came home. But tonight, it had all come back. The instincts, the training, the steady, cold focus that let you work while people screamed and bled and died around you. She hated that she was good at it, hated that it felt right. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. This one from Carla. You okay? Emily stared at the screen, typed back, yeah, deleted it. Typed, getting there, sent it. She closed her eyes, tried to sleep, and failed. Instead, she sat there in the dark, replaying the night, wondering what the morning would bring, wondering if Victor Lang would still be chief of surgery when she clocked in tomorrow, wondering if any of this would change anything at all. But mostly she wondered if the soldiers she'd saved tonight would remember her name, or if she'd just be another nurse who did her job and disappeared back into the background where people like her were supposed to stay. By the time dawn broke, she still didn't have an answer. She got up, showered, pulled on clean scrubs, and drove back to Ridgeway Medical Center because that's what she did. That's what she'd always done. When she walked through the ER doors at 6:45, the day shift was just starting. The board was full again. Chest pain in Bay 2, a kid with a fever in pediatrics, someone's grandfather with chest tightness. Normal. Too normal. Emily tied her hair back, checked the schedule, and got to work. But when she walked past the trauma bay, she saw something that made her stop. Victor Lang was standing inside, talking to two men in suits. Hospital administration, maybe. Or legal. His face was tight, his posture stiff. One of the men handed him a folder. Lang opened it, read the first page, and his expression collapsed. Emily didn't stay to watch. She kept walking, pulled on a fresh pair of gloves, and headed for Bay 2. But as she passed the nurse's station, Carla caught her arm. Did you hear? Hear what? Carla lowered her voice. Lang's being formally reviewed. Someone filed a complaint about last night. Hospital administration's involved. So's the military. Emily's stomach tightened. Who filed it? Carla shrugged. Does it matter? It didn't. Not really. Emily pulled her arm free gently. I've got a patient. Emily. But she was already walking away, disappearing into the controlled chaos of the ER, where the work never stopped and the noise never faded, and people like her kept the whole damn thing running whether anyone noticed or not. And somewhere behind her in the trauma bay, Victor Lang stared at the folder in his hands and realized that the nurse he'd dismissed had just become the reason his career was about to unravel. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Official letterhead, hospital seal embossed at the top. Words like formal investigation and conduct review and pending administrative action blurred together as his eyes skipped across the page. His hands weren't steady. He tried to make them steady, but they wouldn't cooperate. Dr. Lang, he looked up. The taller suit, Martin Keswick, Chief Operating Officer, stood with his arms crossed, expression carved from granite. The other man, someone from HR whose name Lang couldn't remember, held a tablet and tapped notes without looking up. This is a preliminary notice, Keswick continued. You'll have an opportunity to respond in writing within 72 hours. Until then, you're suspended from trauma response duties. You'll continue administrative responsibilities only. Lang's throat tightened. Suspended? For what? I ran that ER last night. No, doctor, you didn't. Keswick's voice didn't rise, didn't need to. According to multiple witness statements, you obstructed emergency response protocol, dismissed qualified personnel, and created a hostile work environment during a mass casualty event. The military liaison corroborated those findings. Lang stopped, started again. Hayes was out of line. She's a nurse. She doesn't have the authority. She had the training. She had the experience. And she had the composure to manage a situation you couldn't handle. Keswick leaned forward slightly. We're not here to debate qualifications, Doctor. We're here to inform you that your conduct is under review. If you have a defense, put it in writing. The HR rep glanced up. You should also know that Nurse Hayes has been formally commended by Captain Warren and his unit. The hospital board will be recognizing her actions at next week's meeting. Lang felt the floor tilt under him. You're commending her? Why wouldn't we? Keswick's eyes were flat. She saved lives. Multiple witnesses confirmed she took control when leadership failed. That's exactly the kind of employee we want representing Ridgeway. Lang opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The suit from HR tapped his tablet one more time, then turned and walked out without another word. Keswick lingered a moment longer, studying Lang the way you'd study a broken piece of equipment you weren't sure was worth fixing. 72 hours, Doctor. Use them wisely. Then he was gone too, and Lang stood alone in the trauma bay with the folder still clutched in his hands and the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like insects trapped in a jar. Across the ER, Emily finished checking vitals on the chest pain patient, ruled out cardiac, likely anxiety attack, and handed the chart to the attending. The man thanked her, actually looked her in the eye when he said it. She nodded, moved to the next bay, but she could feel it, the shift in the air. People glanced at her differently now, not with the usual casual invisibility she'd gotten used to, but with something sharper, awareness, maybe respect, maybe wariness. She wasn't sure which bothered her more. A resident approached her near the med cart, younger guy with nervous energy and a stethoscope slung crooked around his neck. Nurse Hayes? She turned. Yeah? I just wanted to say, last night was incredible. The way you handled everything, I've never seen anyone work like that. Emily's jaw tightened. I was just doing my job. No, I mean, he fumbled for words. You were amazing, seriously. I learned more watching you in 2 hours than I did in 6 months of rotations. She wanted to tell him to stop. Wanted to say it wasn't amazing. It was just muscle memory and adrenaline and doing what needed to be done because no one else would. But he looked so earnest, so young, that she just nodded instead. Thanks. He smiled, relieved, and walked away. Emily exhaled slowly, turned back to the cart, and started restocking supplies with hands that moved too fast, too precise. Like if she kept busy enough, she wouldn't have to think about what came next. Carla appeared at her elbow. You've got a fan club now. I don't want a fan club. Too late. Carla leaned against the counter, voice low. Half the staff's talking about you. The other half's talking about Lang. Either way, you're the story today. Emily's hands stilled. I didn't ask for this. I know. Carla's tone softened. But you earned it. I just... Emily stopped, struggled for the words. I did what anyone would have done. No. You did what someone with your training would have done. Most of us don't have that. Carla paused. And Lang sure as hell doesn't. Emily didn't respond. She sealed the med cart, checked the inventory log, and moved toward the next task. Keep moving. Keep working. Don't stop long enough for the weight of it to settle. But it was already settling. She could feel it pressing down on her shoulders, that familiar heaviness from years ago, when people looked at her like she was supposed to have answers, supposed to be strong, supposed to carry things no one else could carry. She'd left the military to get away from that. Now it was following her anyway. By midday, the rumors had spread through the hospital like wildfire. Emily heard fragments of them in passing, whispered conversations near the elevators, hushed exchanges in the break room. Lang's getting investigated. Did you hear what Hayes did? Military said she saved 20 people. Heard she was special forces or something. She wasn't special forces. She'd been a combat medic attached to an infantry unit. But facts didn't matter when people wanted a story, and Emily had become the story whether she liked it or not. She ate lunch alone in the far corner of the cafeteria, back to the wall, watching the room without really seeing it. Old habits. You sat where you could see the exits. You kept your back protected. You stayed aware. A tray clattered onto the table across from her. Emily looked up. It was one of the ER nurses, Jenna, mid-20s, usually cheerful, right now looking oddly serious. Mind if I sit? Emily shrugged. Free country. Jenna sat, poked at her salad without eating. So, you're like a war hero or something? Emily's fork paused halfway to her mouth. No. But you were overseas in combat. I was a medic. I did my job. That's not what Captain Warren said. He told the board you ran an aid station under fire for 8 hours straight. Said you kept people alive who shouldn't have made it. Emily set down her fork. What do you want, Jenna? Jenna blinked. I wanted to understand why you never said anything. Why you let Lang treat you like that if I what? If I'm so impressive? Emily's voice stayed flat, but something hard edged into it. Because it doesn't matter what I did before. I'm a nurse now. That's the job. I don't need a medal for doing it. Jenna looked down at her salad. I didn't mean... I know what you meant. Emily stood, picked up her tray. And I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who showed up and did the work. Same as everyone else. She walked away before Jenna could respond, dumped her tray, and headed back to the ER. Her chest felt tight. Breathing took effort. She pushed through the double doors and nearly collided with Dr. Brennan, one of the senior attendings. Hayes, good. I need you in Bay 4. Possible sepsis, patients crashing. Emily followed without a word. Grateful for the distraction. Grateful for something concrete to focus on that wasn't people staring at her like she'd grown a second head overnight. Bay 4 was chaos. The patient, elderly woman, late 70s, was seizing. Monitors screaming. A junior resident stood frozen at the bedside, hands hovering uselessly over the crash cart. Emily moved on autopilot. Get me 0.5 milligrams lorazepam IV, now! The resident fumbled for the vial. Emily took it from him, drew it up, administered it herself. The seizure broke 30 seconds later. The woman's body went limp, breathing ragged but steady. Good. Emily checked the IV line, adjusted the fluids. Now we need cultures. Blood, urine, sputum if we can get it. Start broad-spectrum antibiotics, vancomycin and piptazo, standard sepsis protocol. Dr. Brennan stepped in, scanned the monitors, nodded. Good call. Hayes, you stay with her until ICU comes down. Yes, doctor. Brennan left. The resident lingered, looking sheepish. I should have... You hesitated. Don't do it again. Emily didn't look at him, just kept working. Sepsis moves fast. You freeze, people die. Next time, act first, think second. Right, okay, thanks. He left too. Emily stayed beside the patient, monitoring vitals, adjusting drips, waiting for the ICU team. The woman's eyes fluttered open once, confused and frightened. Emily leaned closer, voice soft. You're okay. You're in the hospital. We're taking care of you. The woman's hand moved weakly toward Emily's. Emily caught it, held it gently. Rest. You're safe. The woman's eyes closed again. Emily stayed there, holding her hand, until the ICU nurse arrived and they transferred her upstairs. When Emily walked back into the main ER, she found Carla waiting near the nurse's station with an odd expression on her face. What? Lang just left. Emily's stomach dropped. Left? Walked out, packed his stuff from the office and left. Security escorted him. Suspended or fired? Don't know yet, but he's gone. Carla hesitated. People are saying it's because of you. Emily's hands clenched at her sides. It's not because of me. It's because he screwed up. Maybe, but you're the reason anyone noticed. Emily turned away, stared at the board full of patient names and complaint codes. Normal ER flow. Standard stuff. Nothing that required a war hero or a decorated medic or whatever the hell people thought she was now. I didn't want this, she said quietly. Carla stepped closer, lowered her voice. I know, but it happened anyway. And now you've got a choice. Let it bury you, or use it. Use it how? However you want. You've got the administration's attention. You've got the staff's respect. Lang's gone, which means trauma response is going to need new leadership. Carla paused. Could be you. Emily shook her head. I'm a nurse, not a doctor. So? You ran that ER better than any doctor I've seen. You think rank matters when lives are on the line? It matters to the people writing the checks. Maybe. Or maybe they're smart enough to see what you did and realize they need you more than you need them. Emily didn't answer. She pulled up the next patient file on the computer, scanned it, and headed for Bay 6. Carla watched her go, shaking her head but smiling slightly. The rest of the shift blurred together. Emily moved from patient to patient, task to task, staying in motion because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant facing the mess she'd stepped into without meaning to. By 6 p.m., the day shift ended. Emily clocked out, grabbed her jacket, and walked through the parking lot toward her car. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the asphalt. She unlocked the door, slid inside, and sat there for a moment with the engine off. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Martin Keswick, COO. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow at 9 a.m. My office, 4th floor. Please confirm. Emily stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She typed, confirmed. Hit send before she could talk herself out of it. Another text came through, this one from Captain Warren. Heard Lang's out. Good. That hospital's better without him. You did the right thing. She didn't respond to that one, just set the phone down and started the car. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every stoplight seemed to take twice as long. When she finally pulled into her apartment complex, the sky had gone dark and the streetlights flickered on one by one. Inside, she dropped her keys, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto the couch. Her body ached. Her head throbbed. She closed her eyes and tried to empty her mind, but images kept surfacing, patients bleeding out, Lang's face going pale, soldiers calling her lieutenant, the weight of Carla's words. You've got a choice. She didn't want a choice. She wanted to do her job and go home and not be the center of anyone's story. But that option had evaporated the moment she'd stepped into that parking lot and started giving orders, and there was no getting it back. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her brother. Saw something on the news about Ridgeway. Military incident. You okay? She typed back, yeah, long shift, talk later. He responded immediately. You sure? Yeah, okay, call me if you need anything. She set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Outside, she could hear traffic humming in the distance, someone's dog barking, the faint wail of a siren blocks away. She thought about Lang's face when Keswick handed him that folder, thought about the residents who looked at her differently now, thought about Warren calling her lieutenant like the last 5 years hadn't happened, and she was still that person who ran through gunfire to pull wounded soldiers out of burning vehicles. She wasn't that person anymore. Or maybe she was, and she'd just been pretending she wasn't. Sleep didn't come easy. She lay in bed, staring at the dark until exhaustion dragged her under sometime after 2 a.m. When the alarm went off at 7, she felt worse than when she'd gone to bed. But she got up anyway, showered, dressed in clean clothes, not scrubs this time, but slacks and a blouse because Kesik's office wasn't the ER and she needed to look like someone who belonged in a meeting with the COO. She drove to the hospital early, parked, and sat in the car until 8:45. Then she walked inside, took the elevator to the 4th floor, and found Kesik's office at the end of a long hallway lined with abstract art and motivational posters about teamwork. The receptionist smiled at her. "Nurse Hayes?" "Yes." "He's expecting you. Go right in." Emily knocked once, then opened the door. Kesik sat behind a wide desk covered in files and a laptop. He looked up, gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She sat. Kesik closed the laptop, folded his hands. "Thank you for coming." "You didn't really give me a choice." A flicker of a smile. "No, I suppose I didn't." He leaned back. "I'll get to the point. What you did 2 nights ago was extraordinary. You took control of a chaotic situation, organized a mass casualty response, and saved lives. The military liaison filed a formal commendation. The board wants to recognize you publicly." Emily's stomach tightened. "That's not necessary." "Maybe not, but it's happening." Kesik paused. "What interests me more is what comes next. I'm not following. Dr. Lang's suspension is likely to become permanent. He violated multiple hospital policies, and frankly, his conduct was indefensible. That leaves a gap in trauma response leadership." Kesik's eyes sharpened. "I want you to fill it." Emily blinked. "I'm a nurse." "I'm aware. I'm not offering you a medical degree. I'm offering you a position as trauma coordinator. You'd oversee triage protocol, train staff on mass casualty response, and work directly with attending physicians to improve patient outcomes during critical incidents." "That's..." She stopped. "That's not a nursing role." "It is now. We're creating it. For you." Kesik leaned forward. "Ridgeway needs someone who can do what you did the other night. Someone who doesn't freeze when things go sideways. Someone who's been there and knows how to lead under pressure." He paused. "That's you." Emily's throat felt tight. "What if I say no?" "Then you go back to the ER and we find someone else. But I don't think you will." "Why not?" "Because you care too much. You wouldn't have taken control that night if you didn't. You wouldn't have stayed in that parking lot giving orders while Lang yelled at you if you didn't care about saving those soldiers." Kesik's voice softened slightly. "You can pretend you're just a nurse who wants to stay invisible, but we both know that's not true." Emily looked down at her hands. They were steady now. No shaking, no tremor, just still. "I'll need to think about it. Take 24 hours. But after that I need an answer." She stood. Kesik stood too, extended his hand. She shook it, then walked out of the office and down the hallway and into the elevator. When the doors closed, she leaned against the wall and exhaled slowly. The elevator opened on the ground floor. Emily stepped out and nearly walked into Dr. Brennan. "Hayes, good timing. I need you in the ER. We've got a multi-car pileup coming in. ETA 5 minutes." Emily's mind snapped into focus. "How many?" 6, maybe 7. At least 2 critical." "I'll be right there." She followed him through the corridors, back into the controlled chaos she knew how to navigate. When she pushed through the double doors into the ER, the energy was already ramping up. Nurses prepping bays, residents pulling on gloves, someone shouting about blood supplies. Emily tied her hair back, grabbed a pair of gloves, and positioned herself near the ambulance entrance. The first sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Carla appeared beside her. "Here we go again." "Yeah. You good?" Emily pulled the gloves tight, flexed her fingers. "Always." The first ambulance pulled up. Paramedics threw open the doors. A young woman on a backboard, unconscious, blood soaking through the gauze on her head. Emily moved forward, hands already reaching for the gurney. "What have we got?" "Head trauma, unresponsive, GCS of 6, vitals unstable." "Bay 1. Let's move." They moved. Emily led the way, voice steady, calling out orders as they transferred the patient. Dr. Brennan stepped in, scanned the injuries, started barking instructions. Emily was already 3 steps ahead, securing lines, prepping equipment, anticipating what came next. The second ambulance arrived, then the third. The ER flooded with bodies and noise and blood. Emily moved through it like water, smooth and fast, touching every case, stabilizing every crisis, holding the whole thing together with nothing but muscle memory and grit. Dr. Brennan glanced at her once, mid-procedure, and muttered, "You're wasted as a floor nurse." Emily didn't respond, just kept working. 2 hours later, the worst was over. Patients stabilized. Crises managed. The ER settled back into its usual controlled chaos. Emily peeled off her gloves, washed her hands, and stepped into the hallway. Her body was screaming at her, feet aching, back tight, hands sore. But her mind was clear, focused, alive in a way it hadn't been in years. Carla found her near the vending machines. "So, how'd the meeting go?" Emily leaned against the wall. "They offered me a job." "What kind of job?" "Trauma coordinator. They're creating the position." Carla's eyes widened. "Holy shit." "Yeah. What'd you say?" "I said I'd think about it." "And?" Emily looked at her. "I don't know." Carla studied her for a long moment. "Yes, you do." Maybe she did. Maybe she'd known the moment Keswick said it, but admitting it meant accepting that the version of herself she'd tried to bury was never really gone, just waiting. Her phone buzzed. Another text, this time from a number she didn't recognize. "Emily Hayes, this is Colonel Marcus Trent, base commander. Captain Warren spoke highly of you. I'd like to discuss a potential consultation role with our medical corps. Are you available to meet?" Emily stared at the message, then at Carla, then back at the message. "What?" Carla asked. "The military wants to talk to me." "About what?" "I don't know." Emily pocketed the phone. "But I'm starting to think I don't get a vote in any of this." Carla smiled. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." Emily didn't answer. She pushed off the wall and walked back toward the ER, because there were still patients waiting and charts to update and work to be done. But something had shifted. She could feel it settling into place, a new shape her life was taking whether she wanted it or not. By the time her shift ended and she walked out into the night air, she'd made a decision. Maybe not consciously, maybe not out loud, but it was there, solid and undeniable, waiting for her to catch up. She got in her car, started the engine, and pulled out her phone. Typed a message to Keswick. "I'll take the position. When do I start?" Hit send. 30 seconds later, the response came through. "Monday. Welcome aboard." Emily set the phone down and drove home, and for the first time in 5 years, she didn't feel like she was running from something. She felt like she was running toward it. But when she pulled into her apartment complex, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street, tinted windows, government plates. A man in a suit stood beside it, hands clasped in front of him, watching her building. Emily's blood ran cold. She knew that look, that posture, that vehicle. Whatever came next wasn't just about the hospital anymore. Someone had been waiting for her, and now they'd found her. Emily killed the engine but didn't get out. Her hand stayed on the keys, fingers tight enough to leave marks. The man in the suit hadn't moved, just stood there beside the SUV, patient as stone, like he had all night. Like he knew she wasn't going anywhere until he let her. She recognized the type. Federal? Maybe intelligence. The kind of operative who didn't knock on doors, just appeared and expected you to follow. Her phone buzzed. A text from the same number Colonel Trent had used earlier. "The man outside is Agent Dalton. He's with me. We need to talk. Tonight." Emily's pulse kicked up. She typed back. "About what?" The response came immediately. "Not over text. Let him in, or come with him. Your choice." She looked up. Dalton was watching her through the windshield now, no expression on his face. Waiting. Emily took a slow breath, pocketed her phone, and stepped out of the car. Dalton straightened slightly but didn't approach. She walked toward him, stopping about 6 feet away. "Emily Hayes? You know who I am, or you wouldn't be here." A faint smile. "Fair enough. Colonel Trent sent me. He'd like to speak with you. It's 10 p.m. "Yes, ma'am." "This couldn't wait until morning?" "No, ma'am." Emily studied him. Mid-40s, clean-cut, the kind of controlled stillness that came from years in the field. Not a threat, not yet, but definitely not someone she could brush off. What's this about? I'm not authorized to brief you. The colonel will explain. Dalton gestured toward the SUV. If you're willing. And if I'm not? Then I wait here until you are. His tone didn't change. Polite, professional, immovable. Emily glanced back at her apartment, then at the SUV. She could go inside, lock the door, ignore this. But people like Dalton didn't go away just because you ignored them. And whatever Trent wanted, it was big enough to send a federal agent to her door at night. Give me 5 minutes to change. Take your time. She walked upstairs, unlocked her apartment, and closed the door behind her. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from the adrenaline starting to kick in. She changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a sweater, splashed water on her face, and stared at herself in the mirror. You could say no. Except she couldn't. Not really. Not when the military came knocking with that particular tone of urgency. She grabbed her jacket and keys, locked up, and headed back downstairs. Dalton was waiting by the passenger door. He opened it for her without a word. Emily climbed in. The interior smelled like leather and gun oil. Dalton slid into the driver's seat and pulled out smoothly, heading south toward the base. They drove in silence for 10 minutes. Emily watched the city lights blur past, trying to piece together what this could be about. The convoy incident was over. Lang was suspended. The hospital had handled the crisis. So why was a colonel pulling her into a late-night meeting? How long have you been watching me? She asked quietly. Dalton glanced at her in the rear view. We weren't watching you. We were waiting for the right moment. For what? To ask for your help. I'm a nurse, not active duty. I know what you are, ma'am. So does the colonel. That was all he'd give her. Emily settled back into the seat and stopped asking questions. They reached the base 20 minutes later. Dalton flashed credentials at the gate, and they waved him through without checking Emily's ID. He drove past rows of barracks and administrative buildings, finally stopping in front of a low-slung structure with reinforced doors and no windows. Secure facility. Briefing center, maybe. Or something worse. Dalton killed the engine. This way. Emily followed him inside. The hallway was narrow, fluorescent lit, sterile. They passed 2 armed guards who nodded at Dalton but watched Emily like she was contraband being smuggled in. At the end of the hall, Dalton stopped in front of an unmarked door, knocked twice, and pushed it open. Inside was a small conference room. A table, 6 chairs, a screen mounted on the wall. And sitting at the head of the table was a man in uniform, late 50s, graying hair, 3 stars on his shoulder. Colonel Marcus Trent. He stood when Emily entered. Nurse Hayes, thank you for coming. Emily didn't sit. I didn't have much choice. Trent's mouth twitched. No, I suppose you didn't. Please, sit. She sat. Dalton closed the door and took a position near the wall, hands clasped. Trent remained standing, studying her for a long moment. I'll be direct. 2 nights ago, you ran triage on 23 of my soldiers after a convoy incident. Captain Warren says you kept most of them alive long enough to get proper treatment. He also says you operated under pressure better than half the combat medics he's worked with. Trent paused. That matches what I found in your service record. Emily's stomach tightened. You pulled my file. Of course I did. You saved my people. I wanted to know who you were. He sat down, folded his hands on the table. What I found was interesting. Multiple commendations. Combat action badge. Field promotion to lieutenant during Operation Enduring Freedom. Honorable discharge after 5 years. He leaned forward slightly. And then nothing. You disappeared into civilian life, took a nursing job, and stayed off the radar. I did my time. I came home. Most people don't walk away from a career like yours. Not when they're that good at it. Emily's jaw tightened. Most people don't see what I saw. Trent nodded slowly. Fair enough. But that's exactly why I need you. For what? He picked up a remote, clicked it. The screen lit up with a map. Middle East, Northern Africa, conflict zones highlighted in red. We're running a joint training operation with Allied forces in 6 months, multinational medical response exercise. Mass casualty simulation, field hospital setup, trauma coordination under combat conditions. He paused. I need someone to design the medical protocol and train the teams. Someone who's been there and knows what actually works when everything's falling apart. Emily stared at the screen. You've got plenty of active medics who can do that. I've got medics who know the theory. I need someone who's lived it. Trent's eyes sharpened. Captain Warren says you ran an aid station for 8 hours under enemy fire. That's not theory. That's survival. That was a long time ago. Muscle memory doesn't fade. Neither does experience. Trent leaned back. I'm offering you a civilian contract, 6 months, consultant role. You'd work directly with my medical corps, design the protocols, run the training scenarios. No deployment, no combat. Just teaching people how to stay alive when the shooting starts. Emily's hands clenched under the table. I left that behind for a reason. I know. And I'm not asking you to go back to war. I'm asking you to help make sure the next generation doesn't die because they weren't trained right. His voice softened. You've already proven you can't walk away when lives are on the line. 2 nights ago, you didn't have to step in. But you did. Because that's who you are. Emily looked away. You don't know who I am. I know enough. Trent slid a folder across the table. Contract details, salaries generous, schedules flexible. You'd still work at Ridgeway part-time if you want, but I need an answer within 48 hours. Emily stared at the folder without touching it. Why me? You've got hundreds of qualified people. Because my soldiers trust you. Warren's team has been talking about you nonstop since that night. They want to learn from you, and frankly, so do I. Trent stood. Think about it. Dalton will take you home. Emily picked up the folder, held it like it might explode. This isn't just about training, is it? Trent paused at the door. No, it's about saving lives. Same thing you've been doing since you put on a uniform. He looked back at her. You walked away once. I'm giving you a chance to walk back. On your terms. Then he was gone, and Emily sat alone in the conference room with the folder in her hands and a decision pressing down on her like a landslide. Dalton drove her home in silence. When they pulled up to her apartment, he turned in his seat. For what it's worth, ma'am, I've seen a lot of operators. You're one of the good ones. Emily met his eyes. How would you know? Because you didn't hesitate. Not when it mattered. He paused. That's rare. She got out without responding, walked upstairs, and locked herself inside. The folder sat on her kitchen counter like a live grenade. She didn't open it, just stared at it while she made coffee she didn't drink and paced the apartment until her legs ached. Her phone buzzed. Carla. You okay? Heard some rumors about military brass asking for you. Emily typed back. Fine. Just tired. Bullshit. Talk to me. Tomorrow. Promise. She set the phone down and finally opened the folder. Contract terms. Salary, 3 times what she made at Ridgeway. Schedule. 20 hours a week, flexible. Scope of work. Protocol design, field training, trauma simulation oversight. At the bottom, a handwritten note from Trent. You've already changed lives. Now help me change how we save them. Emily closed the folder and pressed her palms against her eyes. She'd spent 5 years trying to be normal, trying to be just another nurse in just another hospital. And in 2 days, everything had unraveled. Lang was gone. Keswick had offered her a promotion. The military wanted her back, and she couldn't shake the feeling that all of it, every piece, had been building toward something she couldn't see yet. She thought about the soldiers she'd saved, thought about Sergeant Booker gripping his rifle in the parking lot, terrified and bleeding. Thought about the young woman in Bay 4 who would have seized to death if Emily hadn't moved fast enough. People lived because she knew what to do. And maybe that was enough. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Trent. I'll do it. But I need full autonomy on protocol design. No interference, no second guessing. I run it my way or I walk. The response came 30 seconds later. Agreed. Welcome back, Lieutenant. Emily stared at the screen. Lieutenant. She hadn't been called that in 5 years. Hadn't wanted to be called that. But something in her chest loosened at the word like a knot finally coming undone. She didn't sleep that night, just sat on the couch, watching the city lights through her window until dawn broke and she had to get ready for her shift at Ridgeway. When she walked into the ER at 6:30, the energy felt different. People looked at her, not with casual invisibility, but with awareness, respect, maybe even a little wariness. Carla caught her near the nurse's station. You look like hell. Didn't sleep. Yeah, I can tell. Carla lowered her voice. What happened last night? The military made me an offer. And? I took it. Carla's eyes widened. What kind of offer? Consultant work, training, protocol design. Emily pulled on a pair of gloves. Part-time. I'll still be here. Jesus, Emily, you're going to burn out. Maybe, but it's the right thing. Carla studied her for a long moment. You sure about this? Emily didn't answer, just tied her hair back and headed for the first patient on the board. The shift was brutal. 3 traumas, 2 codes, a septic patient who crashed twice before stabilizing. Emily moved through it on autopilot, hands steady, voice calm, keeping everything together by sheer force of will. At noon, Kesik's assistant found her in the break room. Mr. Kesik wants to see you, now. Emily followed her upstairs. Kesik was waiting in his office, standing by the window with his hands in his pockets. Close the door. She did. He turned to face her. I heard you accepted a military contract. Emily's stomach dropped. How did you? I make it my business to know what's happening with my staff, especially when they're about to become very valuable. He crossed his arms. Does this interfere with your position here? No, the contract's part-time. I can do both. And if it becomes too much, then I'll tell you. Kesik studied her, then nodded. Good, because I'm not letting you go that easily. He moved back to his desk, picked up a file. The board approved your promotion. You start as trauma coordinator on Monday. You'll have an office, a budget, and full authority to overhaul our emergency response protocols. Emily blinked. That fast? Lang's hearing is next week. He's likely to be terminated. We need someone in that role immediately. Kesik handed her the file. This is yours. Don't screw it up. She took the file, still processing. I won't. I know. He sat down, waved a hand. Dismissed. Emily walked out of his office in a daze. 2 jobs, 2 entirely different worlds colliding, and she just agreed to juggle both. Carla was waiting by the elevator. Well, I got the promotion. And the military thing? That too. Carla laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're insane. Probably. They rode the elevator down in silence. When the doors opened, Emily stepped out and nearly collided with Dr. Brennan. Hayes, good. I need you in trauma bay. Possible stroke. Patient's deteriorating fast. Emily followed him without hesitation. The patient, late 60s, male, left side weakness, was already seizing when they arrived. Emily moved on instinct, calling out orders, stabilizing the airway, coordinating with the stroke team. 15 minutes later, the patient was stable and headed for CT. Brennan pulled off his gloves, looked at Emily. You're wasted in a standard nursing role. So I've been told. I'm serious. You should be running this department. I'm not a doctor. Doesn't matter. You think faster than half the attendings I know. He paused. Keswick tell you about the promotion? Yeah. Good. We need you in that position. Brennan glanced around the ER, lowered his voice. Lang was a liability. Everyone knew it, but no one had the guts to call him out until you showed up and made him look incompetent. Emily's jaw tightened. I didn't try to make him look like anything. I know. That's what makes it worse for him. Brennan almost smiled. You just did your job, and it was enough. He walked away. Emily stood there, staring at the empty trauma bay, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 72 hours. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Victor Lang. We need to talk. Emily's blood went cold. She stared at the screen, debating whether to respond. Then curiosity, or maybe something darker, got the better of her. About what? The response was immediate. Meet me at Grayson's Coffee. 1 hour. Please. She should have said no, should have blocked the number and moved on, but something in that single word, please, made her hesitate. She typed back, fine. 1 hour. Grayson's was a small cafe 3 blocks from the hospital. Emily arrived early, ordered black coffee, and sat in the back corner where she could see the door. Lang walked in 10 minutes later, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His coat was wrinkled, his tie crooked, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He spotted her, walked over, and sat down without asking. Thank you for coming. Emily didn't respond, just waited. Lang exhaled slowly. I'm not here to make excuses. What I did was wrong. How I treated you was inexcusable. He looked down at his hands. I let arrogance blind me. I dismissed you because I didn't see past your title, and people almost died because of it. They didn't almost die. They lived. No thanks to you. He flinched. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're only sorry because you got caught. That's not... He stopped, started again. You're right. I wouldn't have apologized if the board hadn't forced my hand, but that doesn't change the fact that I was wrong. He met her eyes. I'm asking for your forgiveness, not because I deserve it, but because I need to hear myself say it out loud. Emily studied him. The arrogance was gone, stripped away, leaving behind something raw and desperate. You humiliated me in front of the entire staff. You told me to stay in my lane. You dismissed my experience because it didn't fit your idea of what a nurse should be. Her voice stayed level, but every word cut. And when lives were on the line, you fought me instead of listening. I know. Do you know what it's like to watch someone you could have saved die because the person in charge was too proud to admit they were wrong? Lang's face crumpled. No, but I know what it's like to realize you're that person. Silence settled between them. Emily took a sip of coffee, set it down carefully. I don't forgive you. Lang closed his eyes. But I don't hate you either. She leaned forward slightly. What you did was wrong, but you're not the first doctor who let ego get in the way, and you won't be the last. The difference is whether you learn from it or let it destroy you. He opened his eyes, looked at her. What would you do? Me? Emily almost laughed. I'd find a way to make sure it never happens again. I'd take the suspension, use the time to figure out what kind of doctor you actually want to be, and come back better. Or don't come back at all. She stood, picked up her coffee. But don't ask me for forgiveness. Ask the soldiers who almost died because you couldn't handle being wrong. She walked out before he could respond. The rest of the day blurred. Emily finished her shift, went home, and collapsed into bed fully clothed. But sleep didn't come. Her mind kept spinning. Lang's broken expression, Trent's offer, Kezick's promotion, the weight of expectations piling up faster than she could process. Her phone buzzed. Captain Warren, heard you signed with Trent. That's good news. We need you. She didn't respond, just turned off the phone and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the city, Victor Lang sat alone in his apartment, staring at the suspension letter on his kitchen table and wondering if redemption was even possible. Somewhere on the base, Colonel Trent reviewed training schedules and updated mission parameters, confident he'd found the right person for the job. And somewhere deep in Emily's chest, a part of her she'd tried to bury for 5 years woke up and refused to go back to sleep. Monday morning came too fast. Emily arrived at Ridgeway at 7, carrying a box of personal items to move into her new office. It was small, barely bigger than a storage closet, but it had a desk, a computer, and a door that closed. That was enough. She spent the morning reviewing trauma protocols, identifying gaps, drafting new procedures. By noon, she'd outlined a complete overhaul of the triage system and flagged 6 critical areas that needed immediate attention. Carla knocked on the door. You settling in? Getting there. Good. Because you've got a visitor. Emily looked up. Who? Military, says it's urgent. Emily's stomach dropped. She followed Carla out to the waiting area. Captain Warren stood near the entrance, uniform crisp, expression grim. Lieutenant, we need to talk. Now. Emily led him to her office, closed the door. What's wrong? Warren sat down, pulled out a tablet. Remember the convoy incident? The one that brought 23 wounded to your ER? Of course. We've been investigating what caused it. Thought it was mechanical failure. He turned the tablet toward her. It wasn't. The screen showed a classified report. Emily scanned it quickly. Her blood went cold. Sabotage? Deliberate. Someone tampered with the vehicles before they left the base. Warren's jaw tightened. We've got a security breach, and whoever did it knows our medical response protocols inside and out. Emily's mind raced. You think they targeted the convoy to test your response? Or to send a message? Either way, we've got a problem. Warren leaned forward. Trent's moving up the training timeline. He wants the new protocols operational in 3 months, not 6. And he wants you on site at the base full-time until we're ready. Emily's hands clenched. I just started this job. I know. But this is bigger than Ridgeway. If someone's targeting our medical operations, they'll hit us again, and next time we might not have someone like you around to save the day. Warren's eyes hardened. We need you, Lieutenant, now. Emily stared at the report, her mind spinning through implications and consequences. 3 months? Full-time? No safety net. Everything she'd built in the last 5 years, about to collapse. And somewhere out there, someone was watching, waiting, planning the next move. And Emily Hayes had just become the only thing standing between them and a catastrophe no one was ready for. She stared at Warren, the tablet screen still glowing between them. Sabotage. The word hung in the air like cordite. Someone had deliberately targeted that convoy, and now the military wanted her to drop everything and fix a problem she hadn't created. I can't just leave Ridgeway. I signed a contract. Keswick already knows. Warren cut her off, voice flat. Trent called him this morning. They worked it out. You'll keep your title here, but you're on loan to us for the next 3 months. Full salary from both ends. Emily's hands went cold. You went over my head. We didn't have a choice. This isn't about promotions or hospital politics anymore. Warren leaned closer. Whoever hit that convoy knew exactly when and where to strike. They knew our routes, our timing, our vulnerabilities. And if they know that much, they know our medical protocols too. He paused. Which means the next time they hit us, they'll target field hospitals, aid stations, anywhere our people are vulnerable. Emily's mind raced through the implications. If someone was systematically attacking medical infrastructure, the casualties wouldn't just be soldiers. They'd be medics, nurses, anyone trying to save lives in the field. When do you need me? Tomorrow. 0600. Pack for 3 months. That's not enough time. It's all the time we have. Warren stood, pocketed the tablet. Trent's assembling a team. You'll have full access to personnel, equipment, whatever you need. But we need those protocols bulletproof before the next operation. His expression softened slightly. I know this isn't what you signed up for, but you're the only one who can do this. He left before she could argue. Emily sat alone in her office, staring at the half-unpacked box on her desk. 1 day. They were giving her 1 day to wrap up her entire life and disappear into a military base for 3 months. She pulled out her phone, called Carla. Hey, I'm leaving tomorrow. Military contract, 3 months, full-time. Silence. Then, Jesus, Emily, what about your new position? They're holding it, but I need you to cover my shifts until I'm back. Carla exhaled hard. Yeah, okay, I'll handle it. Thank you. Emily, are you sure about this? You just got out of that world. Emily closed her eyes. I don't think I ever really left. She spent the rest of the day tying up loose ends, transferring cases, briefing other nurses, documenting procedures she'd started implementing. By 6 p.m., her office was empty again, the box repacked with things she wouldn't need for months. Keswick found her in the hallway. Warren briefed me. I didn't ask for this. I know, but they need you more than we do right now. He handed her a folder. Your contract here is suspended, not terminated. When you come back, the position's still yours. Don't make me regret waiting. Emily took the folder. I won't. She drove home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded her too much of desert sunsets overseas. Inside her apartment, she pulled out her old deployment bag from the back of the closet. Dusty, worn, still smelling faintly of canvas and sand. She packed methodically, tactical gear she'd kept out of habit, sturdy boots, clothes that could take abuse, her old medic kit, updated with civilian supplies but still organized the way the Army had taught her. Her phone buzzed. A text from her brother. Mom says you're deploying again? Emily frowned. She hadn't told her mother. Hadn't told anyone except Carla. Not deploying, just training, stateside. 3 months. You sure that's all it is? Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. Be safe. She set the phone down and finished packing. By midnight, everything was ready. She tried to sleep and failed, finally giving up around 4 a.m. and making coffee instead. At 5:30, she loaded her bag into the car and drove to the base. The streets were empty, the city still asleep. She felt like she was moving through a dream or a memory. This was how it had started last time. A call in the middle of the night. Pack your gear. Report for duty. And then 5 years of her life disappeared into sand and blood and screaming. The gate guard checked her ID, waved her through. She parked near the administrative building where Warren had told her to meet. He was already there, standing beside a Humvee with 2 other soldiers. "Lieutenant, right on time." Emily slung her bag over her shoulder. "Where are we going?" "Training facility, 20 miles north. Trent's waiting." Warren gestured to the Humvee. "Let's move." The drive took 30 minutes through back roads that cut through pine forests and open fields. When they finally stopped, Emily found herself staring at a sprawling complex, barracks, obstacle courses, a mock village built for urban combat training, and at the center, a large prefab building marked medical operations. Trent stood outside, arms crossed, watching their approach. When Emily stepped out, he nodded once. "Welcome back, Lieutenant." "Colonel?" Emily scanned the facility. "This is bigger than I expected." "It needs to be. We're training 4 companies, roughly 600 personnel. You'll be working with my senior medical staff to design field protocols for mass casualty events, chemical exposure, and hostile fire scenarios." He started walking toward the building. "Your primary objective is to create a system that works when everything else fails. No power, no supplies, no backup, just people in training." Emily followed him inside. The building was divided into sections: classrooms, simulation bays, a fully equipped mock field hospital. Soldiers moved through drills, setting up triage stations, practicing trauma procedures under the supervision of combat medics. Trent led her to a small office overlooking the main training floor. "This is yours. You'll have a team of 6 medics assigned to you. They're good, but they've never worked under someone with your experience." He handed her a tablet. "Personnel files. Review them. We start first briefing at 0800. Emily took the tablet. "What about the sabotage investigation?" "Ongoing. Agent Dalton's heading it up. Right now, we're working on the assumption that whoever hit the convoy has inside knowledge of our operations." Trent's jaw tightened. "Which means we're redesigning everything from the ground up. Routes, protocols, communication procedures. Nothing gets reused. That's going to take more than 3 months. Then we prioritize. Medical operations first. If they hit us again, I want my people able to survive without support." He paused at the door. "You've got full authority here, Lieutenant. Use it." He left. Emily set the tablet down and stared out at the training floor. Soldiers ran through drills, shouting orders, moving with controlled urgency. She recognized the choreography, the same patterns she'd learned years ago, refined by necessity and survival. She pulled up the personnel files: 6 medics, all combat veterans, all with at least 1 deployment under their belts. She read through their records, noting strengths and weaknesses, already planning how to structure the training. At 0800, she walked into the briefing room. 6 soldiers stood at attention, 3 men, 3 women, all looking at her with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. At ease, Emily set the tablet on the table. "I'm Lieutenant Hayes. I'll be running medical protocol development for the next 3 months. I know some of you have more recent combat experience than I do. I don't care. What I care about is whether you can follow orders and think on your feet when everything's going sideways." One of the men, Corporal Davies, according to his file, spoke up. "With respect, ma'am, most of us have been doing this for years. What makes you qualified to redesign our protocols?" Emily met his eyes. "I ran a combat aid station in Kandahar for 8 hours under sustained enemy fire, with half my team dead and supplies running out. I kept 40 men alive long enough to get them evacuated. That qualify enough for you?" Silence. Davies' expression shifted from skeptical to respectful. "Good. Now, sit down and let's get to work." She spent the next 4 hours walking them through her vision, a modular triage system that could adapt to any scenario, prioritizing speed and flexibility over rigid procedures. She drew diagrams on the whiteboard, ran hypothetical scenarios, challenged them to find holes in her logic. They found plenty. And every time they did, Emily adjusted, refined, made it better. By noon, they had a working framework. One of the women, Sergeant Rios, leaned back in her chair. "This is good, really good, but it's going to be hell to train everyone on it in 3 months. Then we don't train everyone, we train trainers." Emily pointed to the roster on the screen. 6 of you become experts. You each take a company, run them through drills until they can do this in their sleep. I'll oversee, troubleshoot, and handle the scenarios that break the model. Davies nodded slowly. That could work. It will work, because we don't have another option. Emily saved the framework to the tablet. You've got the rest of the day to review this. Tomorrow we start field drills. 0600. Don't be late. They filed out. Emily stayed behind, staring at the whiteboard covered in her handwriting. It felt right. Felt like something she'd been avoiding for 5 years was finally clicking back into place. Warren appeared in the doorway. How'd it go? They're skeptical but capable. We'll make it work. Good, because we just got another problem. He stepped inside, closed the door. Dalton found something. The sabotage wasn't random. Whoever did it left a signature, a specific pattern in the tampering that matches 3 other incidents over the past 18 months. Emily's stomach dropped. 3? Why didn't anyone connect them before? Because they happened at different bases, different units. No one was looking at the bigger picture. Warren pulled up a file on his phone. But now we are. And it looks like someone's been systematically testing our vulnerabilities. The convoy was just the latest. Do we know who? Not yet, but Dalton thinks it's someone with access to classified logistics, which narrows it down to maybe 200 personnel across 4 bases. Warren pocketed his phone. Trent's locking down security protocols. No one moves supplies without dual authorization. No one accesses medical data without a logged reason. Emily processed that. If they're targeting medical operations specifically, they might come after this facility. Trent's already thought of that. We've got armed patrols, surveillance, the works. Warren met her eyes. But if they do hit us, you need to be ready. I'm always ready. I know. He almost smiled. That's why you're here. The days blurred together after that. Emily worked 16-hour shifts, designing protocols, running drills, troubleshooting failures. Her team adapted faster than she'd expected, taking her framework and refining it through repetition and stress testing. By the end of the first week, they'd run 50 scenarios. By the end of the second, they were teaching other companies. By the end of the third, the system was operational, but the investigation into the sabotage had stalled. Dalton briefed Trent and Emily in a secure room, frustration etched into every line of his face. We've narrowed it to 50 suspects, all with the right access, all with opportunity, but none of them have a clear motive. He tossed a file onto the table. We're running background checks, financial audits, everything, but whoever this is, they're careful. Trent leaned forward. What about external actors? Foreign intelligence? Possible, but the pattern suggests someone inside, someone who knows our operations intimately. Dalton rubbed his eyes. We'll find them, but it's going to take time. Emily picked up the file, scanned the list of names. Most were unfamiliar, but one caught her eye. A logistics officer named Captain Neil Harmon, stationed at the same base where the convoy had originated. What about him? Dalton glanced at the name. Harmon? Clean record. 15 years in logistics, no red flags. Except he was in charge of convoy scheduling the night of the incident. Emily looked up. And according to this, he requested a transfer 2 days before it happened. Dalton's expression sharpened. Transfer to where? Administrative duties? Desk job at Fort Benning. Away from field operations. Trent stood. Pull his communications. All of them. I want to know who he talked to, when, and why. Dalton nodded and left. Emily set the file down, mind racing. If Harmon had requested a transfer right before the sabotage, it could be coincidence, or it could be someone covering their tracks. 2 days later, Dalton called an emergency briefing. Emily, Trent, and Warren gathered in the secure room. Dalton looked like he hadn't slept. We found it. Harmon's been communicating with an outside contact using encrypted messages. Took our cyber team 48 hours to crack it. He pulled up a screen. He's been feeding logistics data to a third party for the past 6 months. Routes, schedules, medical supply inventories. Trent's jaw clenched. Who's the contact? Still working on that. But based on the data he provided, the contact knew exactly when and where to hit the convoy for maximum impact. Dalton's eyes were hard. Harmon's in custody. He's talking, but he claims he didn't know what the data would be used for. Emily's fists clenched. He's lying. Probably, but without the contact's identity, we can't prove intent. Dalton shut down the screen. We're close, but we're not there yet. Trent turned to Emily. How's training progressing? We're ready. The new protocols are operational. We can deploy them tomorrow if needed. Good, because I'm moving up the timeline. We go live in 2 weeks. Trent's expression was granite. If Harmon's contact is planning another hit, they'll expect us to be vulnerable. I want to prove them wrong. Emily nodded. We'll be ready. But that night, alone in her temporary quarters on the base, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. Harmon was a logistics officer, not a field operative. He didn't have the expertise to sabotage vehicles, which meant someone had helped him. Someone still out there. Someone still watching. She pulled out her laptop and started going through the personnel files again, cross-referencing anyone who'd had contact with Harmon in the past year. Most were routine, other logistics officers, supply clerks, administrative staff. But one name stood out. Dr. Victor Lang. Emily's blood went cold. She pulled up Lang's file. He'd done a consulting rotation at the base 2 years ago, advising on field hospital procedures. He'd worked with logistics to coordinate medical supply chains, and he'd worked directly with Harmon. Emily grabbed her phone, called Dalton. It's 2 a.m., Lieutenant. This better be... Check Victor Lang, former chief of surgery at Ridgeway Medical. He consulted at the base 2 years ago. He worked with Harmon. Silence. Then, how do you know that? I just pulled his file. He was there. He had access. Emily's heart pounded. And he had a motive. After the convoy incident, he was suspended. His career imploded. What if he was involved and tried to cover it up by sabotaging the response? That's a hell of a leap. Then prove me wrong. Pull his records. See if he had contact with Harmon recently. Dalton exhaled. I'll look into it. Stay by your phone. He hung up. Emily sat in the dark, staring at Lang's file photo, his arrogant expression, the same face that had dismissed her in the ER, that had fought her instead of listening. If he was involved, it wasn't just about ego anymore. It was about people dying because he couldn't stand being wrong. Her phone rang. Dalton. You were right. Lang contacted Harmon 3 weeks before the convoy incident. Encrypted email routed through a civilian server. We almost missed it. Emily's hands shook. What did the email say? Logistics request, asked for details on convoy routes and medical supply schedules, claimed it was for a research project on field hospital efficiency. Dalton's voice was tight. Harmon sent him everything. Where's Lang now? According to Ridgeway, he's on administrative leave. Home address in Charleston. Dalton paused. We're sending a team to pick him up, but I need you to stay out of this, Lieutenant. Let us handle it. Like hell. Emily. She hung up, grabbed her jacket, and headed for the door. 30 minutes later, she was in a Humvee with Warren and 2 MPs racing toward Charleston. Warren tried to talk her out of it twice. She ignored him both times. They reached Lang's apartment just as dawn broke. Dalton was already there with a federal tactical team, surrounding the building. He saw Emily and swore. I told you to stay at the base. You don't get to tell me what to do. Emily pushed past him. Is he inside? We think so. No response to calls or knocks. We're about to breach. Let me go in first. Dalton stared at her. Absolutely not. He knows me. If he's desperate, he might do something stupid. But if I'm there, he might actually talk. Or he might take you hostage. Emily met his eyes. Then your team can shoot him. Win-win. Dalton looked at Warren, who shrugged. She's not wrong. This is insane. But Dalton nodded to his team. You go in with 2 agents. You stay behind them. If anything goes wrong, you hit the floor. Clear? Clear. They breached the door 90 seconds later. Emily followed the agents inside, adrenaline spiking. The apartment was small, cluttered, smelling like stale coffee and unwashed clothes. They cleared the living room, the kitchen. Emily found him in the bedroom. Lang sat on the edge of the bed, a bottle of pills on the nightstand, half empty. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. When he saw her, something broke in his expression. You. Of course it's you. Emily stayed in the doorway, agents flanking her. Victor, put the pills down. Why? So you can drag me out and parade me in front of cameras so everyone can see what a failure I am? His laugh was bitter. You already destroyed my career. Might as well finish the job. I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself. By asking for logistics data, I was trying to help. I wanted to improve field hospital protocols. I didn't know. His voice cracked. I didn't know what Harmon was doing with it. You knew enough to use encrypted emails. You knew enough to hide it. Emily stepped closer. People died because of the information you gave him. That wasn't supposed to happen. Lang's hands shook. I just wanted to prove I was still valuable, that I could contribute. After you humiliated me, I didn't humiliate you. You humiliated yourself by being incompetent under pressure. Emily's voice hardened. And instead of learning from it, you doubled down. You fed classified data to someone who used it to kill soldiers. Lang's face crumpled. I didn't mean, you never do. Emily turned to the agents. Get him out of here. They moved in, securing Lang and pulling him to his feet. He didn't resist, just stared at Emily as they led him past. I'm sorry. Emily didn't respond, just watched them take him away. Outside, Dalton waited. You get anything? Confession. He claims he didn't know what the data would be used for, but he knew enough to hide it. That's enough for conspiracy charges. Combined with Harmon's testimony, we can build a case. Dalton glanced at the building. Good work, Lieutenant. Emily shook her head. It's not over yet. Lang might have given Harmon the data, but someone else used it to sabotage that convoy. We're still missing the third player. We'll find them. You better, because if they hit us again, we might not be ready. The drive back to the base was quiet. Warren sat beside her, watching her stare out the window. You okay? I don't know. Emily's voice was hollow. I thought catching Lang would feel like justice, but it just feels empty. That's because it's not justice yet. It's just the first step. Warren paused. The real justice comes when we make sure this never happens again. Emily nodded but didn't respond. When they reached the base, Trent was waiting. He pulled Emily aside, voice low. Dalton briefed me. Lang's in federal custody. Harmon's cooperating, but we still don't have the third contact. I know, which means we proceed as planned. Training goes live in 2 weeks. If they're watching, they'll see we're ready. Trent's expression was granite. And when they make their move, we'll be waiting. Emily met his eyes. What if they don't make a move? What if they just disappear? Then we've won. But I don't think they will. Trent handed her a folder. Dalton found something in Harmon's communications. A reference to a final operation, something bigger than the convoy. Emily opened the folder. Inside was a single decoded message. Phase 2 initiated. Target, primary medical facility. Timeline, 2 weeks. Her blood went cold. They're coming here. Looks that way. Trent's jaw clenched. Which means we have 2 weeks to turn this base into a fortress and make sure every person here knows how to survive when it all goes to hell. Emily closed the folder, mind already racing through contingencies and protocols. Then we'd better get to work. But as she walked toward the training facility, she couldn't shake the feeling that even with Lang and Harmon in custody, the worst was still ahead, because whoever was pulling the strings hadn't been caught yet, and they were already moving. Emily stood in the center of the training facility, watching her team run through evacuation drills for the 4th time that day. The mock field hospital buzzed with controlled chaos, soldiers shouting coordinates, medics triaging dummy casualties, equipment being stripped and packed in under 3 minutes. They were fast, but fast wasn't enough if the enemy knew exactly when and where to strike. Sergeant Rios jogged over, sweat soaking through her uniform. Ma'am, we're down to 240 on full evac. That's 30 seconds better than yesterday. Still too slow. Emily checked her watch. If they breach the perimeter, we'll have 90 seconds, maybe less. Run it again. Rios nodded and turned back to her squad. Emily's phone buzzed. Dalton. We've got movement. Security cameras picked up someone trying to access the supply depot at 0300 last night. Face was obscured, but the gait analysis matches someone with military training. Emily's pulse kicked. Did they get in? No. But they tried 3 different entry points before pulling back. They're probing defenses. Dalton's voice was tight. Trent's doubling patrols, but whoever this is, they're not giving up. Have you ID'd them yet? Working on it, cross-referencing everyone with base access against the gate profile. Should have something in 6 hours. Make it 3. She hung up and turned back to the drills. Her mind was already running scenarios where an attacker would hit for maximum damage, how to harden those points, how to move personnel if things went sideways. Corporal Davies approached, tablet in hand. "Lieutenant, we've got a problem. The supply audit came back. We're missing 4 medical kits from the inventory." Emily's stomach dropped. "When were they logged out?" "They weren't. Just gone." Davies pulled up the logs. "Last recorded check was 3 days ago. Could have been taken any time since then." "What was in them?" "Standard trauma supplies. Tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, airway kits, and morphine auto-injectors." Emily's blood went cold. Morphine could be used medically, or it could be weaponized, overdose someone, make it look accidental. "Lock down the pharmacy. No one accesses controlled substances without dual authorization and video documentation." "Yes, ma'am." Davies left. Emily pulled out her phone, called Warren. "We've got stolen medical supplies. 4 kits, including morphine. Someone's staging an inside job." Warren swore. "I'll notify Trent. We need to sweep all personnel quarters. Now." "Do it quietly. If the thief knows we're looking, they'll accelerate their timeline." "Agreed. Stand by." Emily walked to the command center where Trent was coordinating security upgrades. Maps covered the walls, facility layouts, patrol routes, defensive positions. He looked up when she entered. "Warren briefed me. How bad?" "Bad enough. If someone's stealing medical supplies, they're either planning to disable our response capabilities or they're prepping for something that requires field treatment off-grid." Emily pointed to the facility map. "Either way, we need to assume they're still on base." Trent's jaw clenched. "Dalton's running gate analysis. We'll have an ID soon." "Not soon enough. If they hit us tonight, then we respond with what we have." Trent's eyes were hard. "Your protocols are operational. Your team is trained. We've hardened the perimeter. If they come, we'll be ready." Emily wanted to believe that. But 5 years of combat had taught her that being ready wasn't the same as being safe. She spent the rest of the day running her team through worst-case scenarios. Chemical attack, coordinated assault, infrastructure sabotage. By nightfall, they were exhausted but sharp. Every movement practiced, every contingency mapped. At 2200 hours, Emily was in her quarters reviewing supply manifests when her phone rang. Dalton. "We've got him." Gate analysis matched a maintenance contractor named Ellis Vickers. He's been on base for 6 months, worked logistics before transitioning to facilities. And he's got a sealed juvie record from 15 years ago. Hacking charges. "Where's he now?" "Off-grid. Hasn't checked in for his shift. Security's sweeping his quarters." Dalton paused. "Emily, there's more. Vickers worked at Ridgeway Medical 2 years ago, same time Lang did his consulting rotation." Emily's hands clenched. They knew each other. "Looks that way. We're pulling all their communications now." "Find him. Tonight." She hung up and grabbed her jacket. Warren met her in the hallway. "You heard?" "Yeah, let's move." They reached Vickers' quarters with a tactical team. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was stripped clean. No personal items, no electronics, nothing. But on the desk sat a single burner phone. Dalton picked it up with gloved hands, powered it on. One message in the outbox, sent 3 hours ago. Phase 2 active. Primary target secured. Awaiting confirmation. Emily's heart stopped. Primary target, that's the medical facility. Or you. Dalton met her eyes. If they know you're the one redesigning protocols, taking you out eliminates the threat. Then let them try. Emily turned to Warren. "Where's Trent?" "Command center." "Why?" "Because if Vickers is already moving, we don't have time to wait for him to make the first move. We need to draw him out." Warren's eyes widened. "You want to use yourself as bait." "I want to end this." Emily's voice was steel. "Tonight." 30 minutes later, Emily stood alone in the medical facility training floor, lights dimmed, wearing a concealed mic and a vest under her uniform. Tactical teams were positioned in the shadows, hidden but ready. Dalton coordinated from the command center, watching through security feeds. "This is a bad idea." Warren's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Noted." Emily kept her eyes on the doors. "He's not going to pass up a clean shot." "And if he doesn't come?" "Then we wasted a night. But I don't think we will." Minutes crawled past. Emily's pulse stayed steady, her breathing controlled. She'd done this before. Walked into kill zones, dared the enemy to take the shot. The difference was she'd had a rifle back then. Now she just had trust that the people in the shadows wouldn't let her die. Movement. A shadow crossed the far window. East side, Dalton's voice was calm. Single figure, confirming, it's Vickers. Emily didn't move, just stood there, back to the door, waiting. The door opened. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Lieutenant Hayes. Emily turned. Vickers stood 10 feet away, hands in his jacket pockets, expression cold. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, thin, with the wiry build of someone who relied on speed over strength. Vickers. You're smarter than Lang gave you credit for. Lang's an idiot. That's not a high bar. A flicker of a smile. True, but you ruined a very profitable operation. That convoy was supposed to expose how vulnerable your medical logistics are. Instead, you turned it into a hero story. He pulled one hand from his pocket. No weapon, just a small remote. Can't let that stand. Emily's eyes flicked to the device. What is that? Insurance. I've placed charges throughout this facility. Medical supplies, equipment storage, the barracks. One button, and this whole place becomes a crater. He tilted his head. But I'll make you a deal. Walk away. Leave the base. Forget this ever happened, and I'll let everyone else live. You're bluffing. Am I? Vickers pressed a button. Somewhere in the distance, a small explosion echoed, controlled, precise. That was the supply depot. Next one's the barracks, then the command center, then this building. He stepped closer. You've got 60 seconds to decide. Emily's mind raced. If he had charges placed, a firefight could set them off. But if she let him walk, he'd detonate anyway. The only play was to keep him talking until Dalton's team could locate and disarm the explosives. Why? She asked. Lang, I understand. Ego and bitterness. But you? What's your angle? Vickers laughed, bitter and sharp. You really don't see it, do you? People like you waltz in, get called heroes for doing your job, and everyone bows down. Meanwhile, people like me, who actually keep things running, get ignored, underpaid, dismissed. His voice hardened. I spent 6 months setting this up. 6 months proving I could outthink your entire security apparatus. And you know what? I did. Lang was just a useful idiot. Harmon, too. I fed them enough rope to hang themselves while I stayed invisible. Until now. Until now. He raised the remote. 30 seconds, Lieutenant. Walk away or watch everyone burn. Emily held his gaze. You're not walking out of here. Then we both die, along with everyone else. His finger hovered over the button. Got him. Dalton's voice crackled in Emily's ear. Explosives located. Teams are disarming. Keep him talking. Emily took a slow breath. You think I'm afraid of dying? I've walked through worse than anything you can throw at me, but you... She stepped closer. You're terrified. Because deep down, you know you're not invisible anymore. You're just small. Vickers's face twisted. Shut up. You wanted recognition, wanted people to see how clever you are, but the only thing anyone's going to remember is that you lost. Emily's voice dropped. To a nurse. He screamed and hit the button. Nothing happened. Vickers stared at the remote, confusion bleeding into panic. He hit it again. Again. Nothing. Jammed the signal 30 seconds ago. Dalton's voice was calm in Emily's ear. He's all yours. Vickers lunged. Emily sidestepped, drove her elbow into his ribs, and swept his legs. He hit the ground hard. Tactical teams swarmed in from the shadows, weapons trained, shouting commands. Vickers didn't resist, just lay there, gasping, beaten. Emily stepped back, breathing hard, adrenaline crashing through her system. Warren appeared at her side. You okay? Yeah. She watched them haul Vickers to his feet. Yeah, I'm good. Dalton joined them, pulling off his headset. Explosives are disarmed, all personnel accounted for. It's over. Emily nodded, but didn't feel relief yet, just exhaustion. Trent arrived minutes later, surveyed the scene, then turned to Emily. That was reckless. That was necessary. It was both. He almost smiled. But it worked. Good job, Lieutenant. They took Vickers into federal custody. Emily gave her statement, filed her report, and walked out into the night air. The base was quiet now, the crisis contained, but her hands were shaking, delayed reaction, adrenaline finally fading. Carla called. Saw the news, you okay? Yeah, it's done. Good. Because Keswick wants you back at Ridgeway, says your office is collecting dust. Emily almost laughed. Tell him I'll be there Monday. You sure? You've been through hell. I'm sure. Emily looked up at the stars. I need normal for a while. She spent the next 3 days wrapping up training operations, transitioning her protocols to the senior medics, ensuring everything would continue without her. On the final day, Trent called her to his office. The Joint Chiefs reviewed your work. They're impressed. He slid a folder across the desk. They want to offer you a permanent position. Civilian consultant, full-time, coordinating medical response across all branches. Emily stared at the folder. That's a big job. I know. And you don't have to answer now, but think about it. Trent leaned back. You've proven you're one of the best at this. We need people like you. Emily picked up the folder, held it carefully. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. She left the base that afternoon with the folder in her bag and too many thoughts in her head. The drive back to Charleston felt longer than it should have. When she finally pulled up to Ridgeway Medical, the sun was setting, painting the building in gold and amber. Carla met her at the entrance, pulled her into a hug that lasted longer than Emily expected. Missed you. Missed you too. Inside, the ER was controlled chaos, standard evening rush. Emily walked through it, feeling the familiar rhythm settle back into her bones. Patients needing care, staff working together. The steady hum of life being saved one crisis at a time. Keswick found her near the nurses' station. Welcome back. Thanks. Your office is ready. We've got a backlog of protocol updates waiting for you. He paused. And the board wants to meet with you next week. Formally recognize your work during the convoy incident. Emily's jaw tightened. That's not necessary. It is, actually. Not for you, for everyone else. They need to see that doing the right thing gets recognized. Keswick's expression softened. You changed this hospital, Emily. Don't downplay that. She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. That weekend, Emily sat in her apartment with 2 folders on the table. One from Trent, full-time military consultant, designing protocols that would save lives across the entire armed forces. The other from Keswick, trauma coordinator at Ridgeway, building a system that would protect her community. 2 paths, both meaningful, both terrifying in different ways. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sergeant Rios. Team's not the same without you, ma'am, but we're holding it together. Thanks for everything. Another from Warren. Joint Chiefs approved your protocols for deployment. You built something that's going to save thousands. Be proud. And one from her brother. Mom says you're famous now. Don't let it go to your head. Love you. Emily smiled, set the phone down, and looked at the folders again. She thought about Victor Lang sitting in a cell, career destroyed by arrogance and desperation. About Vickers, brilliant but hollow, needing validation so badly he'd been willing to kill for it. About Harmon, caught between ambition and cowardice, selling out his own people for money. And she thought about the soldiers she'd saved, the patients at Ridgeway who'd lived because she'd been there. The medics she'd trained who would carry her lessons into the field and bring people home alive. She picked up her phone and called Trent. Colonel, I've made my decision about the consultant position. And? I'll take it, but part-time, 20 hours a week, remote when possible. I've got commitments here I'm not walking away from. Trent was quiet for a moment. That works. We'll draw up the contract. Good. Because I'm not choosing between saving lives here and saving lives there. I'm doing both. Understood. Welcome aboard, Lieutenant. She hung up, called Keswick, told him the same thing. He didn't hesitate. Make it work. You've earned the autonomy. Monday morning, Emily walked into Ridgeway wearing scrubs and carrying a tablet loaded with new protocols. The ER staff looked up as she passed. Some nodded, some smiled. A few newer nurses watched her with something close to awe. She hated that, but she understood it. Dr. Brennan caught her near the trauma bay. Heard you're splitting time with the military. Yeah, good. They need you, so do we. He gestured toward the board. Got 3 inbound traumas. You ready? Emily tied her hair back, pulled on gloves. Always. The day blurred into controlled chaos, the kind she thrived in. Patients arrived, were stabilized, moved to surgery or ICU. Crises were managed. Lives were saved. And through it all, Emily moved with the same steady competence that had kept 40 men alive in Kandahar and 23 soldiers breathing in a parking lot. At shift change, Carla found her updating charts. You hear about Lang? Emily looked up. What about him? Pled guilty. Federal conspiracy charges. He's looking at 10 years minimum. Carla's expression was complicated. They're saying he cooperated fully, gave up everything about Vickers and the operation. Emily set down her pen. Good. You don't sound satisfied. I'm not. He didn't do it because it was right. He did it to save himself. Emily closed the chart. But at least he can't hurt anyone else. Carla nodded slowly. You think people can change after something like that? Emily thought about it. About the broken look on Lang's face when they'd arrested him. About the apology he'd offered that she'd refused. I think people can learn. Whether they actually change depends on what they do with the lesson. She stood, stretched. But that's not my problem anymore. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm. Emily split her time between Ridgeway and the military base, designing protocols during the day and training teams at night. It was exhausting, but it felt right, like she'd finally found a way to use everything she'd learned without losing herself in the process. One evening, 3 months after Vickers' arrest, Emily received a letter. No return address. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Lieutenant Hayes, I'm writing this from prison. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it, but I wanted you to know that I've spent the last 3 months thinking about what you said in that coffee shop, about learning from mistakes instead of letting them destroy you. I've enrolled in online courses, medical ethics, trauma psychology. I don't know if I'll ever practice medicine again. Probably not. But I'm trying to understand where I went wrong, why I let ego override judgment, why I couldn't admit when I was out of my depth. You were right about everything. I was incompetent under pressure. I dismissed you because I couldn't handle being wrong. And people almost died because of it. I don't know if that makes me redeemable, but I'm trying. I hope you're doing well. I hope the work you're doing saves lives. I know it will. Victor Lang. Emily read the letter twice, then set it on her desk. She didn't know how she felt about it. Angry, maybe, or sad, or just tired of carrying the weight of other people's failures. She picked up her phone, called Warren. Hey, random question. Do people actually change, or do they just get better at hiding who they are? Warren laughed. That's heavy for a Tuesday night. Yeah, well, I got a letter from Lang. He says he's trying to be better. And you don't believe him? I don't know what I believe. Emily rubbed her eyes. Part of me wants to think people can turn things around. Part of me thinks he's just saying what he needs to say to feel less terrible about himself. Probably both. Warren's voice softened. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter what he does. What matters is what you do. And you've already done more good than most people manage in a lifetime. Emily smiled despite herself. You trying to make me feel better? Is it working? Little bit. Good. Now get some sleep. You've got a training op at 0600 tomorrow. Yeah. She hung up, looked at the letter one more time, then filed it away. Maybe Lang would change, maybe he wouldn't. But that wasn't her responsibility anymore. Her responsibility was the work, the protocols, the lives she could still save. And she was damn good at it. 6 months after the Vickers incident, the Joint Chiefs formally adopted Emily's medical protocols across all branches. The ceremony was small, just senior officers and a handful of civilians. Emily stood at the podium in her dress uniform, feeling awkward and out of place. Trent introduced her. Lieutenant Hayes has revolutionized how we approach combat medicine. Her protocols have already been credited with saving over 200 lives in field operations. It is my honor to present her with the Distinguished Service Medal for her contributions to military readiness and personnel safety. Applause. Emily accepted the medal, shook hands, gave a short speech about teamwork and preparation. The whole thing felt surreal. Afterward, Warren found her outside. How's it feel? Weird. He laughed. You'll get used to it. I don't want to get used to it. I just want to do the work. I know, but sometimes the work gets recognized. Deal with it. Emily shook her head but smiled. You're impossible. So are you. That's why this works. Back at Ridgeway, the board held their own ceremony, smaller, more personal. Keswick presented Emily with a plaque recognizing her as trauma coordinator and commending her response during the convoy crisis. Carla stood in the back, beaming. The ER staff applauded. Emily felt her throat tighten. I'm not good at speeches, she said quietly. But I want you to know, this job, this work, it's not about medals or recognition. It's about showing up when things go sideways and doing what needs to be done. All of you do that every day. I just happen to be in the right place at the right time. Carla called out from the back. And you happen to be a total badass. Laughter rippled through the room. Emily's face flushed, but she smiled. Yeah, that too. That night, Emily sat on her apartment balcony watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Sergeant Booker. I don't know if you remember me. I was one of the soldiers from the convoy. I just wanted to say thank you. I've got a daughter now, 2 months old. I wouldn't be here to meet her if you hadn't been in that parking lot. So thank you for everything. Emily stared at the message, something breaking open in her chest. She typed back, Congratulations. Glad you made it home. She set the phone down and let the tears come. Not from sadness, not from grief, just from the overwhelming weight of knowing that the choices she'd made, every hard decision, every moment she'd pushed through fear and exhaustion, had mattered. People were alive because she'd shown up. And that was enough. The next morning, Emily woke early, laced up her running shoes, and hit the streets. The city was still waking up, quiet, soft light painting everything in shades of gold. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs ached, until the noise in her head quieted and all that was left was the steady rhythm of her breathing. When she got back to her apartment, she showered, dressed, and headed to Ridgeway. The ER was already buzzing, morning shift handoff, patients rolling in, the familiar chaos she'd learned to navigate like breathing. Carla met her at the nurse's station. You look good. Feel good. Yeah? Carla studied her. You finally figure out what you're doing with your life? Emily smiled. I'm saving people. Same thing I've always done. Just took me a while to accept it. About damn time. They worked side by side through the shift, triaging patients, running codes, managing crises with the practiced ease of people who'd been doing this long enough to make it look simple. At noon, Emily stepped outside for air. The sun was high, the heat pressing down. She closed her eyes, tilted her face toward the light, and let herself feel it. The weight of the metal in her drawer, the protocols being used across the military, the lives saved at Ridgeway, the letter from Booker, the grudging respect from people who'd once dismissed her. She'd been underestimated, dismissed, told to stay in her lane, and she'd proven every single one of them wrong. Not by being perfect, not by never making mistakes, but by showing up, doing the work, and refusing to let anyone else's limitations define her. Her phone buzzed. Trent, new training cycle starts next month. You in? She typed back. Wouldn't miss it. Another message came through. Keswick, board-approved budget increase for trauma services. You've got full authority to expand the program. Congratulations. Emily pocketed her phone and walked back inside. The ER noise wrapped around her, monitors beeping, people calling out orders, the controlled chaos of lives being saved one emergency at a time. This was her place, not because she was the best or the smartest or the most decorated, but because she'd earned it, through sweat and blood and refusing to quit when things got hard. She pulled on fresh gloves, checked the board, and headed for the next patient. Because that's what she did. She showed up, she did the work, and she saved lives. Not for medals, not for recognition, but because somewhere a soldier would go home to meet his daughter. A patient would survive long enough to say goodbye. A medic would remember her training and keep someone breathing just a little bit longer. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Emily Hayes had been dismissed as just a nurse, but she'd never been just anything. She was a combat medic who'd walked through fire, a trauma coordinator rebuilding broken systems, a teacher passing on hard-won lessons to the next generation. She was someone who'd been underestimated her entire life. And she'd spent every moment since proving that the quietest voices can carry the most weight, when they're backed by competence, courage, and an unshakable refusal to let anyone tell them they're not enough. The world had tried to make her small. She'd made herself essential instead, and that was a victory no one could take away.